Nottingham Forest Football Club confirms it following recent circumstances. Nuno Espírito Santo has today been relieved of his duties as head coach. Nuno has gone.
Coming out and saying what his relationship with the owner is a stupid thing to do. What do you expect to happen? It's absurd. You're an employee. It's a ridiculous thing to do.
What's on the horizon if Ange, as expected, is announced as Nuno's successor?
He'll have the same challenges. There's a dearth of talent to go around, so you have to keep on giving your back to other people's cast-offs. You look at the ridiculousness of the way that Ange kept on asking for the media to hit him with a brick, so they did. He kept on giving them the brick to throw at him. Interesting fit.
Simon, isn't football intriguing? Quite an international break, isn't it? The man who sacked Ange Postecoglou at Tottenham, Daniel Levy, has sacked himself. And now Postecoglou seemingly set to return to football with Nottingham Forest and should be in situ for the game versus Tottenham's North London rivals Arsenal on Saturday, live on talkSPORT. That's football, isn't it?
It is. It is. Or there's a dearth of talent to go around, so you have to keep on giving your back to other people's cast-offs.
Do you think? I mean, is Ange a cast-off from elsewhere?
Well, he's cast off from Spurs, isn't he? Cast asunder. Whether he's going to have learnt lessons from Tottenham and subsequently deploy them differently at Nottingham Forest, he'll have the same challenges. Nottingham Forest are looking upwards. Marinakis is no easy person to work for in terms of very demanding, and so he should be because he spends the money and gives him the right to be demanding. And Nottingham Forest have ambitions to win things. So if he sets himself up the same way as he did for Tottenham, then he'll have the same challenges, won't he? Interesting fit.
While I was getting used to the idea that Scotland had won last night, and I'm getting my head down, and you no doubt were snoozing in your palatial apartment not far from me, Nottingham Forest popped out the statement, and this is it, Sam, 12:15 a.m. Nottingham Forest Football Club confirms that following recent circumstances, Nuno Espírito Santo has today been relieved of his duties as head coach. The club thanks him for his contribution, blah, blah, blah. As someone, you'll be getting a message from somebody important, as someone who played a pivotal role in our success last season, he will always hold a special place in our journey. Simon, was there a more predictable ending?
Not really, no. I mean, when we addressed the subject 10 days ago, when the manager decided to take it upon himself to avail the world of his personal relationship with the owner, it was inevitable. I said to you at the time, I think in the studio, that's him gone. And so he has. Marinakis was quite sanguine about it last week, wasn't he? And quite balanced in his outlook, and talked about the emotional nature of managers and so on and so forth, and came back and sacked the fella.
Yeah.
And I'm not surprised. Brought it upon himself. It's not a casualty of football management where owners are being irresponsible and sacking people without giving them enough opportunity and so on and so forth. This is a manager that he's prepared to say the things he said for no reason. There's no necessity for it. And it's the same similar thing that he did at Wolves. I think they got fed up with him at Wolves doing this sort of stuff. And coming out and saying what his relationship with the owner is, to the public, to the media, is a stupid thing to do. What do you expect to happen?
So what he was asking for it, was it?
We got it. He got what he asked for.
Was it? He was asking for it. Was he when he said this in August?
I always had a very good relationship with the owner. Last season was very, very, very close, almost daily basis. This season, not so well. But I always believe that dialogue and what you say or your opinion is always valid, because my concern is the squad and the season that we have ahead of us. But our relations has changed.
It's changed?
Yeah, it's not so close. It's not on a daily basis. So, yeah.
Is that a good thing, though? Or?
No, it's not good. It's not good. I think everybody at the club should be together, but it's not a reality.
I mean, when you hear that,
it's absurd.
There's an element of poking the bear there, isn't it?
It's absurd. It's absurd. You're an employee. You wouldn't appreciate your players going into the media and saying, my relationship with the manager, not so good. We had a good relationship last year, not so good now. We don't talk very much. What would Nuno Espírito Santo do in that situation? He'd probably go apoplectic. He'd probably want the player moved out of the football club or nowhere near him. It's a ridiculous overreach. For whatever reason, he felt the necessity to do it. And whether he's bothered or not, or whether he goes out with his currency at its highest, and subsequently people will be looking at him in a different way and other opportunities may come this way, it's a ridiculous thing to do. It's a completely out of context. People will say those that want to subscribe to the view that managers should be able to say what they want, that managers run football clubs. They really don't. Managers work for football clubs. They're a very important part of it. They run the core proposition of the football team, but they answer to somebody. And everybody in life answers to somebody. There's a group of people out there that will listen to this and think that it's always an ex-owner talking. It's common sense. You don't walk around in your job being able to say what you want about your bosses. So why do you think a football manager is anything different just because he's the face talking to the media about the football team that he produces with other people's money?
Well, it's cost him, hasn't it?
Yeah,
and then when
he's a fool.
We heard Marinakis, Simon. He was at the Europa League draw.
Good manager, by the way. Good job last year. Brilliant job.
Yeah, well, this is it.
Instance.
And this is what really must cause a lot of anguish amongst some of the Forest fans this morning. And we'll get to that. But then Marinakis pitches up at the Europa League draw for TNT Sport. And when he said the relationship is fine, you have to wonder, had he already made his mind up about what he was going to do with Nuno? This was Marinakis.
We have a solid relation. And of course, sometimes we can be nervous, we can say one thing, we can say another, but what counts at the end of the day is the real relation between me and Nuno, between Nuno and the players, and between the players and ourselves, and everything is solid. We all want Nottingham to succeed. And also, we are here in the good days, but we are even closer in the difficult days. So personally, I don't see a problem.
He doesn't have a problem, just fired him. And the key message from that is we're very close in the good days and even closer in the bad days. So what the manager's done is precisely what football managers do. Unless they get what they want, they're out there flapping their gums in the media, suggesting things aren't quite as they want them to be. That's the underlying influence. Whatever you think of Marinakis, he's not a man to be trifled with. He's not a man to play games with. He's a serious individual that operates at a very significant level. Just ask Morgan Gibbs-White, but probably concentrated his mind as to reasons why he said and what was said to him, if you get him off the record ever at some point in his career going forward. But
does he impress you, Marinakis?
Presentation-wise, no, not particularly. Actions-wise, I mean, the old expression, don't judge people by what they say, judge them by what they do. And he does things. You know, he went against the grain when people felt he was going to fire Steve, the manager that he took him up from the Championship. Steve Cooper. And everyone thought that he was going to fire him, and he didn't. He gave him an extended contract. He doesn't muck about. He backs himself. He backs his club. He stands behind. If you ask Nottingham Forest fans what they think of him, what they should do is they should have a pedestal, hold him up on a pedestal. You know, some people might think he's a wrong, and I think Nottingham Forest will turn around and say he's their wrong. And depends what you describe a wrong and as. He doesn't muck about. If somebody says things he doesn't like, he constantly. You know, I like the fact that Neville gets to say what he wants when and where he wants, like me sometimes, and never got the consequence. You don't come to my football stadium. You don't call me a member of the mafia. You don't allege that my attitude is mafia based and then expect to rock in my stadium whilst you do it. I quite like that. I did that sort of stuff. It doesn't hold you in good stead in the end, because at the end of the day, you won't make many friends, and the only person you'll have as a safety net is yourself. And if you're comfortable with that, then it's fine. He has catapulted Nottingham Forest from 23 years in the doldrums to into the Premier League with success, and ambition as almost bedfellows now, because he's pushed them up into a European spot, albeit on the shoulders of Crystal Palace and their failings. They had a brilliant season last year. He's backed it with money, and you can't ask for a lot more than that. He does everything that a football club owner that's committed to his football club should do.
But he does do one thing one moment, Simon, then another the next. I mean, in June, he gave Nuno a new 3-year deal,
and Nuno opened his mouth. And Nuno, so now whether Marinakis can have him out on his toes with some sort of consequence and doesn't have to pay him for 3 years because he's breached some sort of governance, or simply has to pay him. I mean, Marinakis won't worry about that. The salary that Nuno's on, comparison with what the fellow earns and his worth is peanuts. The principle of it is that the manager brought this upon himself. He probably had some justified points, and he may well have a deteriorating relationship with the owner, or a slightly distant. Do you know whose prerogative that is? The guy that you work for. That's his prerogative.
Do you think it was a private conversation that Nuno had with Marinakis, and Nuno, for whatever reason, decided, I'm going to say something here, and did, and said, we're not as close as we used to be, and thereafter, he wrote his own death warrant.
Well, yeah, of course he did. And whether the mixture of Edu coming into the equation and the policy that the owner wants to divest authority down to him, which, by the way, is his gift, and what Nuno Espírito Santo has the choice of is getting on with it or not getting on with it.
So Nuno was asking for it, as far as you're concerned.
He got what he asked for. What did you think? With all good conscience, what did you think was going to happen when you said that? Did you think you were going to get a pat on the back? Did you think that the owner, if you don't know him, if you don't know what someone's going to do, then you're a fool if you do it in public. If you do know what they're going to do, then you shouldn't be surprised. And if he knew what person Marinakis is, given he had such a close relationship with last year, then he must know what the reaction was going to be. Because I sat here in this studio and said to you, see ya.
Yeah.
That's him.
No, you did.
That's him gone.
And you have to wonder what's on the horizon if Ange, as expected, is announced as Nuno's successor. Because Ange is an honest and open guy.
Well, he's another one that says absurd things.
Yeah, but he speaks his mind.
Yeah, but sometimes it's better to keep your mouth shut. We can all speak our minds. We can all come out with exactly what we think at the precise moment in time, then do immeasurable harm to ourselves and the circumstances around it.
Are you having the Ange appointment as and when it's announced?
Well, I'm a great liker of Ange Postecoglou. I haven't changed my view about his personality. I've changed my view about his capability. Because you look at the situation last year, you look at the ridiculousness of the way that Ange kept on asking for the media to hit him with a brick, so they did. He kept on giving them the brick to throw at him. And then eventually he produces a team that finishes 17th in the league and scrapes by in a Europa League, which is wonderful Spurs, but was an awful Europa League final. Against anyone else, they probably would have gotten beaten. But the fact of the matter is that I don't think... Is Ange Postecoglou's reputation been enhanced by Spurs? I can't say that it has. And that's coming from someone that likes the cut of his jib.
We are picking over the bones of what went on overnight, because overnight we saw the statement. Nottingham Forest Football Club confirms it following recent circumstances. Nuno Espírito Santo has today been relieved of his duties as head coach. Nuno has gone, and now it's being widely reported it is a matter of time. So much so it could well be sometime today, maybe this morning, that Ange Postecoglou will be announced as Nuno's replacement. Forest fans, are you having that? It's that simple. 03717 223344. And you are calling us, I'm delighted to say, in big numbers. And Sean is first up, who's a huge Forest fan. Sean, good morning. Simon is here, so am I. But what do you want to say in this? Nuno's gone. What's your take on it?
Good morning. Good morning, Jim. Good morning, Simon.
Good morning.
Great show as ever.
Thank you.
But I always think way back when you look at the actual, when you look at sort of the, when we had the great Brian Clough came in.
Yeah.
He was under, no Forest fan wanted him because he was ex-Derby. We had Nuno Santos now, God bless him, is, gone. What he's done was a great job, but I think he only had one style of football. And I think with Postecoglou, I think we probably get the same thing. So he has one style of football.
Right.
And he can't change.
So are you pretty nonplussed, Sean, if it is Ange?
I personally, no, I don't think he's the right fit for Forest.
Who is?
Well, what choice have we got? Because who's out there and he's willing to come in?
Well, I mean, Sean, we're well nigh certain it's going to be Ange. But has Nuno really done it to himself here by being as outspoken as he was about your owner, who's a controversial figure and speaks his mind? Was Nuno asking for it?
In a sense, yes, he was. I think he shouldn't have spoken out the way he did. He should have done a bit more in a more diplomatic way and just carried on and coached the football team.
Yeah. Sean, listen, thank you for your call.
Don't deal with the politics.
Thanks a lot for your call, Sean. So many calls. I'm going to go to Richard, who's another Forest fan. It's a simple question, Richard. Did Nuno deserve to be sacked?
Morning, guys.
Good morning.
I think on the face value, yes. I mean, I was a big Nuno fan, big advocate, but I think the way that it was going with some of the things that have been said and the fallouts, I think it potentially was the right time, yeah.
And again, you probably heard Simon earlier on. He was outspoken, wasn't he? And we know what Marinakis is like. Was it totally ill-advised on Nuno's part to say what he said?
I think potentially, yeah. I think potentially. I mean, what goes on behind closed doors, we'll never really know. But one sort of sentence that is very familiar at Forest these days is trust the process. So, in terms of the fans moving forward, Ange maybe not a fan favourite, but when Stevie Cooper went, was Nuno? Probably not. So, I think trusting the process is the way to go and stick with it and see how it pans out.
Interesting, Simon.
Well, I think
you hear Richard saying trust the process.
Well, the process being Marinakis.
Yeah,
and you can't not. How can you? And there was some great people at Forest. Nigel Dougherty was a friend of mine. I was very fond of him. He was a committed Nottingham Forest supporter. He couldn't get them promoted. Marinakis has. So after this long period of time where Forest have been in decline, managed decline, Marinakis has come and shown them a vision. I mean, when you look at it and you take yourself out of the equation, I would imagine, thinking about it as I'm now thinking, probably Nuno wanted to get fired. Because if he doesn't know the animal, like Stuart was saying, if he's an intelligent man, he's an intelligent man. Okay, he's an intelligent man. It's all relative intelligence, isn't it? But in terms of football intelligence, he understands the ramifications of perhaps talking about Marinakis. It would suggest that perhaps the environment he worked in, I don't think there's any manager, Jim, irrespective of the orthodoxy, whether you believe in what managers should and shouldn't do, and the sacrosanct nature of the dressing room and all that rubbish, no manager would have liked to see their owner on the pitch the way Marinakis did at the end of the season, and some of the other things that have gone on. They won't like that. They'll endure it, and maybe that was a part of it, and maybe Edu being brought in and the dynamics changing between the job that he took and the job that he now had and the people that he was relating to all come to the fore, and rather than walk away from a contract, he gets himself fired. So if he gets himself fired, what happens to him? He gets paid. So there could be an element of that in it. So when I talk about him being a fool, if he wanted to keep the job, then he's a fool for opening his mouth. If he didn't want to keep the job and wanted to engineer an outcome where he got paid for saying something the owner didn't like, well, he's done that too, hasn't he?
Liam, big Forest fan, do you agree with Simon when Simon says Nuno got himself sacked?
Well, yeah, of course he did. You shouldn't have come out and said those words against your manager.
Yeah.
No one in the normal day and age would talk about their owner or their boss like that. They'd expect to get the sack.
Do you trust the process, Liam?
He's got against his employees.
Do you trust Marinakis?
Well, I was looking at the recent managers of what Marinakis has had. So starting with, we had Martin O'Neill, obviously got rid of him. They then brought in Chris Hughton, didn't go well. Sabri Lamucci went well. That was before Chris Hughton. Then you go to Steve Cooper, then Nuno, and we've gone up and up and up. So hopefully, we go up again. But I can't see Ange being any good. I just can't see it.
Really? You and what you're saying is, if it was down to you, you wouldn't want Ange. You wouldn't make the move for Ange.
I'd employ him for the netball team, maybe, yeah, but I wouldn't employ him for the Forest team. No, I wouldn't.
All right. Listen, thanks for the call. Finish with Sam, who's a big Forest fan. Sam, you've been listening to this. What's your take on it? Nuno's gone. Was he asking to be sacked? And if it is Ange, are you having Ange?
Hi, Jim. Hi, Simon.
Morning.
Hi, Sam.
Yeah, in total, I think you're completely right. He wanted to get sacked, 100%. I don't know whether he's got another job lined up or something he wants to do. But when he came out, even before we kicked a ball this season and said that he wasn't happy with the squad, I think he was eyeing his own exit. As for Ange, really not happy if that's the appointment, to be honest with you. I mean, just look at this season last year, was abysmal at best. 17th in the league with Spurs. Yeah, he got a bit of silverware for their around his neck. But other than that, I don't think it was anything spectacular. I don't think it's the direction we want to move in as a club.
Okay, Sam, thank you for that. Stuart, good morning, mate. Nuno has gone. What do you make of events at your old club?
Well, I've got to say, and good morning, gentlemen, I'm a little bit saddened, actually. I think that the Forest have lost a manager in Steve Cooper that the fans were disappointed to lose. And I think the same will be said about Nuno as well. The club seem to have a lot of stability, European campaign to look forward to this season, more than established in the Premier League. And, with Nuno, I don't know, maybe saying a couple of the things that he said before publicly, maybe the writing was on the wall, but I'm a little bit disappointed. I think he done well for Forest and established a very, very good style of play that all the players bought into.
But Stuart, it begs the question, did Nuno somewhat fatally misjudge Evangelos Marinakis?
I would answer that question and say no. He's not a stupid man, Nuno. I think when you come out and say things about... I don't think he talked disrespectfully about the owner in any way, shape or form, but what he did do was he made his feelings public, and I think whenever you do that, all of a sudden it changes the dynamic of your relationship. Whether he done it as a means to an end or whether he done it as an exit strategy, who knows?
Stu, do you think he'll be Espírito Santo will be upset to have been fired?
In all honesty, I think because he come out and said what he did in the media, maybe he thought that his relationship at the club had run its test of time, and potentially I think when you do come out and say things like that to an owner that's got a reputation of moving managers on, that you can't be surprised if the owner pushes the button in some way. So I think maybe he thought, this is untenable, I can't work in this relationship anymore. I'm second guessing. I don't know from the inside.
When you heard him, Stu, when you heard him say what he said, what was your first reaction? Did you think,
yes,
like I did, mate, that's your lot?
I thought that's a dangerous tactic, Simon. That's what I thought. I think you're poking the bear, as they say, and obviously the bear reacted. So,
but given all the things that you've just said, right, about your club, which is progressive, an owner that spends money in good order, everything going the right direction, the club starting the season relatively well, all besides one bad game against West Ham. Why would Nuno Espírito Santo need to set the place on fire by doing what he did and giving Marinakis the excuse to pull the trigger?
Well, maybe his relationship, and he saw his relationship with the owner coming to a close, and he was exasperated by it, Don't forget, we've had the owner on the pitch as well at some stage. I wouldn't say confronting the manager, but talking to the owner in the public forum, you know. So, so, listen... I think both individuals, let's not write them off, they're intelligent individuals and they know what their action might incur from the opposite individual.
Stuart, we are hearing Ange Postecoglou, in some quarters it's being strongly reported, to be confirmed as Forest head coach imminently. What's your take on it?
Well, first thing that sprung to my mind was style of play is probably counter to how Forest have been playing and the success that Forest have been playing. Very much a counter-attack style of play, defending deep, which suits Milenkovic and one or two others. I think we saw against West Ham when they had to come out and chase the game, they become a little bit open and vulnerable. Now, Ange plays a style of play that is more expansive, more open. So I think if it is him to come in, the style of play's got to change and is going to change. There's no doubt about that. And how that suits the squad of players that have been used to playing in one style, that was the big thing for me. I enjoy Ange, I enjoy listening to him, and in all honesty, I enjoy getting in my car and going to cover games where he puts teams on the pitch.
Lovely, Stu. Do you like the fit? Do you like the fit for Forest with Ange? And don't sit on the fence.
Right. The only thing that worries me, Simon, is the style of play. I think there's a group of players here that have got into a groove, and the style of play has brought them success. That counter-attack, I think certainly the two centre-halves enjoy having people around them to cover them up a little bit and gets the best out of them. If you're going to play expansive and open, does that suit Forest with their counter-attack method of play? That's my question mark with Ange.
Let's kick off with the situation with City. Manchester City and the Premier League have reached an agreement over a legal challenge instigated by City regarding associated party transaction rules. I know I'm asking a lot, Stefan. Break it down for me. The rules. Can you explain for those who don't know what that's about?
Yeah, well, I'll try and do it quickly. I mean, if you remember on the back of Newcastle and the takeover by the Saudis, there was a panicked situation within the Premier League room. And between them, they came up with a new set of rules to strengthen the related party rules and bring in what's known as associated party transaction rules. Now, ironically, it transpires that most of Newcastle's sponsorships are actually related party transactions, and therefore the old rules in any event would have captured the main sponsorship. But put that to one side, because clearly the people in the room, the other clubs, wanted to capture Manchester City as well as Newcastle United and potentially other clubs in the future. And actually, as it's transpired, Chelsea have also been captured by those rules. Anyway, in 2021, they were brought in. They were then then went through a period where there wasn't much noise around the deals that had been approved by them. They effectively ensured that deals with related and connected parties were captured and therefore needed to be reviewed by the Premier League. In 2023, the Premier League clubs wanted to strengthen those rules, and they took some legal advice, and the legal advice said, just be careful here, but went ahead anyway. City threatened at that point to commence proceedings challenging the legality of those rules, but they went ahead and they were voted through narrowly in February of 2024. City did go ahead with the arbitration, and we know in September of 2024, City successfully challenged the APT rules as being unlawful. Shortly after that, the clubs went back to the table and put in place a replacement set of rules, which they claimed were lawful. City said, well, hang on a minute, you shouldn't have done that. So we are going to go after APT rules again in another arbitration. And yesterday, the parties agreed that they would settle the situation and that the rules that were put in place following the panel saying that they weren't lawful, the replacement rules, City now accept that those are valid and are lawful. And we don't know the terms of the settlement, but we do know that City have accepted that particular point. I think it is safe to say that there are obviously other things that City received to accept that position that we don't know about because it's confidential.
I see. Stefan, answer this for me. How can Manchester City go from claiming the rules are discriminatory to claiming that they're valid and binding, actually? I mean, who has folded here?
Well, in fairness, there has been a very lengthy process with some of the leading barristers in the world, actually, in front of a very, very high-quality legal panel that have given both parties quite a lot of guidance as to their thinking on the topic and their thinking about whether those rules are fair in the first place. And I think it's reasonable that following the changes that were made to the rules that reversed a lot of the changes that were made in 2024, so that we now have a 2021 set of rules, the original set, which in many ways the panel had endorsed in that hearing. They had said that there was a legitimate purpose for having APT rules that went against Manchester City. It wasn't, if you remember, it wasn't a complete whitewash for City. City didn't win every point at the hearing.
Right.
It was a narrow win. They got some good concessions. And of course, the overall position was that the rules as they were unlawful. But it didn't say that related party was illegitimate, and it didn't say that APT was illegitimate. It just said that that version of APT was wrong. And so City always knew that at some point the clubs were going to be able to vote through a version of APT. So I think that's why I think City ultimately were happy to accept a settlement.
Right.
We don't know what they got for accepting the settlement. They definitely will have got something because
who will?
City. Because APT2, the one that was coming up now, was a one-way bet for City. Their only way of losing was the costs, because the position is already in the rule book. So even if they'd have had a complete loss in APT2, the only consequence would have been some maybe a couple of £1 million of costs. So City were on a free hit in APT2. It could have been very damaging for the Premier League to lose APT2. Therefore, it made sense for the Premier League to get round the table and commercially agree something. I suspect that the sorts of things that City won as concessions involved costs of the whole thing.
The whole thing?
Well, I think they'll have got a large proportion of the cost of the whole thing.
All the legal costs?
Yeah, in negotiating that deal, yes. Perhaps a concession that the Premier League would put back to the clubs some changes to the current APT rules around the edges. So the Premier League can't commit to make changes to the rules because they have to be voted on. But the Premier League might have said, at the next meeting, we will propose X, Y, and Z. And then the other thing that may have been offered as part of the settlement is compensation for some of the... there was a couple of sponsorship agreements, one with Etihad, which was not fully approved previously, and one with the First Abu Dhabi Bank, which was approved, but only at a lower level. So City had to accept not the full amount that was submitted,
right,
but a reduced amount for fair market value. So maybe City got some compensation out of the Premier League as well.
So, Stefan, I'll throw to Simon. In that, the way I see it, and I know it's simplistic, all these years on, it's as you were.
Not really.
Well, there's a settlement.
Well, yeah, but Man City moved...
Back from 2021.
But 2021 was revised in 2023.
City aren't unhappy, and the Premier League aren't unhappy.
Yeah, but points have been made on both parties. Man City have moved the dial. They have made their points. They have created their own framework for certain things, and they've got a response from it. I mean, the clubs will be... not if Stefan's right, and I have no reason to suggest that he wouldn't be in this instance, that they've had to pay compensation for things. The clubs won't be thrilled by that. And concessions going back from City to get Richard Masters, to get the clubs to understand certain things or to potentially vote through certain things. This is about leadership. That's Masters' job. That's what he should be doing. If he's made a deal with Man City and made some concessions, then he has to deliver them to some extent back to the Premier League and make sure that the clubs understand why those decisions have been made.
I mean, I think it's important that first of all, I agree with you in terms of it is the job of the chief executive of the Premier League to get through these conflicts,
yeah,
and bring the parties forward and make agreements. But I don't think that he was empowered or would have been able to offer a guarantee to the City.
I hear you. No,
of changes.
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
And so I don't think City could accept a kind of soft promise.
Yeah,
no,
I hear you.
So
yeah.
Stefan, I'm being asked by many here, and I know we're coming up to the 11 o'clock bulletin, but I'm determined to get this in. We need to be clear to the listeners, do we not? This case is totally separate from the 115.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's clear. I've always felt it was separate, and I think it's clearer than ever that it is distinct now, and that there isn't this conspiracy theory interaction between the two cases. I think City took it on, one, out of principle, and two, partly from an optical perspective.
Yeah.
To show that they wouldn't just be bashed around by the Premier League.
Right.
And that, they were happy to effectively go to war.
Any truth in this? There's Andy in Manchester. Ask Stefan, Jim. City have got the approval of the original sponsorship deal, which is a huge win, is it not?
Yeah, so there's a couple of points here. First of all, I don't believe that as part of the settlement, the Premier League just waves it through. That's also, if you were to read some of the press last night, that's also the position of the Premier League. So okay. I don't believe it's just been waved through.
Yeah.
But people also need to understand that when in the fair market value assessment, it's not a case of the panel saying, no way, you're not having anything. They say, right, you can have it, but not at the full amount. So we're going to reduce it. We know for a fact that City have renewed with Etihad because it's emblazoned all over the stadium and all over the kit for the last 2 years.
Yes.
Remember, it's expired. We understand it's expired before 2024. So we know that they have had a renewal. So we know that City went to the Premier League with a very large Etihad proposal, and we know that the only difference that they had in approving it was on what's known as the escalator, which is what tends to happen is that you'll have an average annual value to the agreement over the length of the agreement, and it will have an escalator that usually deals with inflation or other changes within that agreement. So if you start at, for example, £100 million per annum for the bundle of rights, then by the end of the period, depending on what that escalator percentage is, you may end up with something between 150 and 200 million pounds by the end of the 10-year period. And so the likelihood is, and I've been informed that this when it does eventually get approved, whether it's at the level that Etihad proposed or at an adjusted level, will be the largest British sporting sponsorship deal of all time, and will be well in excess of £1 billion over the 10 years, partly because of the way that escalator works. Because clearly, if you start at 100 million and by the end of it, it's at 150 or 200 million pounds per annum, then over the 10 years, that adds up very, very considerably. So I would expect the total value of it over the 10-year period to be something like 1.5 to 1.75 billion pounds.
Oh my God. Now there is a sponsorship deal, Simon, that you would have welcomed in your time, would you not? If you're an owner of a football club today,
yeah,
and you're looking at a sponsorship deal like that, I know we're talking about
that's why you can
Abu Dhabi owned,
but that's why you can afford to pay Erling Haaland £600,000 a week or whatever he's getting paid. That's why you can afford to spend hundreds of millions of pounds on transfers, because the commercials, it's one of the parts of the game that the American ownership models will look at and think is underexploited. If you look at the German model and look at the percentage in the German bigger clubs against commercial revenue, against broadcasting revenue, is a fundamental necessity. If Comcast suddenly fall off a cliff and decide they no longer want to own Sky, or they no longer want to participate in a certain way, which is likely to happen, or the broadcast deals aren't going to be the same as they once were, you're going to need commercial revenue, so these deals are right and proper. The only thing about this escalator clause, it'd be interesting to see what the metrics are which define it, because it can't be based upon achievement levels increasing, because they've won everything in the start position.
Yeah, it's not bonus related. Bonuses will be separate.
I accept that, but I'm talking about in terms of what are the metrics to judge.
So if you were to look at the one we know about from the Ineos Spurs recent case, you actually see the details of that particular one, and that the escalator clause in there is just an RPI clause.
Right.
So
right.
It's about,
3%.
Well, it's actually been, it should be about 3 to 5%, but actually in the first year of the Spurs clause, it was 11% because inflation had got out of control.
Yeah. When you look at it, on a morning when we've seen the likes of Nuno sacked at Forest, how appealing is the world of football management? Lots of people harbour huge ambitions, it seems, to get into this industry, the football industry, get in the dugout and do their bit, in spite of the almost inevitability that sometime along the way they'll be sacked. We're joined by a man this lunchtime who, ironically, was put centre stage at Southampton on multiple occasions due to the sackings of Russell Martin and Ivan Juric. And he is Simon Rusk, who joins us live in studio. Simon, good afternoon, mate.
Good afternoon. Great to be here.
It's good to see you again. You're a fan of the show and a fan of this man, which you were telling me very quietly when he was outside the studio, but it's good to hear. And now he's in the studio.
Yeah.
But you enjoy it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was talking about my current time out of work, bit of time to reflect, but also a bit of time daily to do something different. And one of the different things I've been doing is tuning into the show every day. So yeah, genuinely great to be here.
And you're a big fan of boxing as well.
Yeah, real big fan of boxing. Down in Southampton, obviously, got to know Ryan Garner and his coach really well, so followed that, and always interested in the crossover in different sports, and boxing to football. I think there's a lot to take.
Simon, we'll bring it up to date in a moment as to where you've been more recently. You've also got a strange link, have you not, with Evangelos Marinakis, Nottingham Forest, Nuno?
Yeah, went into Nottingham Forest to undertake the role of set-piece coach. Obviously went in with Steve Cooper and went on to work for a period of time under Nuno as well.
How do you look back on that?
Yeah, I think obviously there's a wider conversation about the set-piece role in general, but all managers got their own way of working and didn't really get to know Nuno on a deeper level, so moved on fairly briefly, and it was a great experience working with some great players, and definitely a good experience for my wider role as a head coach.
I mean, I don't know if you want to get into it, but there were suggestions it was Nuno who sidelined you. Was that true?
No, I think, look, when obviously I was recruited to come into Nottingham Forest as the set-piece coach role, it was under Steve that wanted more of a global role for me, so to not just do set pieces but be a coach as well on the grass, and I think as it evolved under Nuno. It's probably going to turn into something slightly different, which is fine. You know, every head coach has got their own way of working. I think in terms of my own role, my daily fulfilment, and how the role was going to be executed every day, it made sense that, you know, I moved on to something else.
I mean, this fella beside you, nothing surprises him. The amount of time he's been in football was at the very top at Crystal Palace, of course. Does nothing surprise you, Simon? The sacking of Espírito Santo this morning. You think, really? Or did you think, was it almost inevitable after crossing swords with the likes of Marinakis, who you know?
Yeah, well, look, I think the first thing is, you know, no one truly knows, other than the guys involved in that directly within the club, the complexities involved, the dynamics taking place, perhaps the vision. So again, it wouldn't be for me to comment on the intricacies of that, but I do think, you know, it's a nature of the beast now. We've got probably in this country the best product of football league in the world, and with that becomes high demand. You know, I'm not an accountant, but the type of figures involved in the Premier League now, you know, there's going to be decisions where people see things differently and want to move in different directions. And, you know, I don't think football in the Premier League is any different from any other business from that point of view, although at times it can seem quite brutal with decision making.
Yeah, I mean, Simon, we often say the Premier League is like no other, and everybody wants to be successful. I mean, it's as simple as that, and there are casualties along the way. And Nuno is the latest.
Yeah, I mean, success is all relative, isn't it? I mean, no one could really argue that a manager that took a team that I tipped to be relegated, that had circled around the plug of relegation for a couple of seasons, to a team that was potentially sitting in the Champions League spot for the bulk of the season. So he had relative success. Now, if you then believe the backstory that Alex Cook was peddling us, that there was a style of play issue, which I think owners should try and keep their nose out of as much as they possibly can. A winning team is more important than a style of play, in my view. But I understand the world's turned and changed. So if you look at it and say, does everybody want success? Well, they had success. So what success do you want? So Marinakis would appear to have been courting another manager behind the manager, which is his prerogative. He can do as he wants. He's an employee. He's got a paid guy. If he wants to get rid of Nuno Espírito Santo, he pays him. The fact is that Nuno Espírito Santo helped him. Yeah, he may well have helped him in that outburst, because it was a stupid outburst. It would have only gone one way, because he knew what was coming on down the train tracks. Yeah, in terms of he wasn't being valued anymore. The relationship with Edu probably wasn't what he wanted. He didn't sign on for that. He signed on for a relationship with Marinakis, and Marinakis pivoted it into a director of football, which again is his prerogative. And all of those things are a changing. It's like a hamster wheel, isn't it? Yeah. A changing perspective.
How did you find Marinakis and any dealings you had with him, Simon? I interviewed him after Forest went up to the Premier League, and it was quite memorable in its craziness. I was in a suite at Wembley, and he was bouncing off walls telling me it was going to be trophies. It's going to be trophies. How did you find him?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a great deal of dealings with Mr. Marinakis, but, you know, what I would say is, you know, you've got to have a great deal of gratitude for the person who's employing you at any football club. And you know, he certainly put his weight and finance behind that football club. And, you know, you have to be grateful for that as an employee and do your job within that, whatever football club you're at, to the best of your ability. So not a great deal of dealings, but certainly, you know, I felt the ambition, that's for sure.
Simon, you've had some time in football, but at a more than decent level. And I know he'll bristle at this, but Brighton, a special club. You were under-23s head coach at Brighton, stepping up from your role as under-18s coach. And so I'm often asked, are Brighton as well run as they're made out to be? The answer to that I give is yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you mentioned, best part of a decade working at the club, where I worked with the 18s to 23s and, you know, significant spells with the first team as well. So great for my experience and development as a young coach then. You know, my main remit at the football club was working with some very, very talented young men that went on to eventually play right at the top of the game. You know, the likes of Rob Sanchez, Ben White, and more recently in the headlines, Victor Gyökeres. So, but a great experience for me, and I'm certainly very grateful for my time there and development as a coach.
What about Gyökeres? What's he going to give Arsenal? Were you surprised he ended up there? To be honest,
I think surprised is the wrong word, but delighted. You know, because obviously when you work with these younger players, you know their journey. You know the adverse periods. You know the times where it wasn't smooth, and you see these big multi-million-pound transfers, and you see the finished article, the 26, 27-year-old. But of course, for me, I remember the journey when they were 15, 16, 17, you know, in the tough times, that even getting the knockbacks, of being behind the curve. So, I genuinely hope he goes on to be a success there, because obviously I'm biased for the guys I've worked with.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious about how that pans out for him. I certainly wish him well.
Has he got it to do it? I mean, is it in him?
Well, I think he's there, isn't he? So obviously the guys that have done the work and, got behind the transfer there and have seen his success overseas, they believe so. So certainly, why not?
Yeah. It's a changing game all the time. Simon and I have been talking about Nuno going. Maybe didn't help himself, Simon. But anyway, in comes Ange. As far as you're concerned, you had interim spells in the Premier League last season with Southampton. Was there some disappointment, Simon, that you didn't stay there after the appointment of Will Still?
No, I don't think disappointment. I think, where it eventually got to, and when Will was coming into the club, I think for the amount of time that I was interim, I think to revert back to being a third choice coach, if you like, I think the dynamics and the relationship and the energies, probably it made sense that, we went separate ways, although, really fond of my time there, great football club, and I certainly wish the club, all the best in getting back in the Premier League. But no, I think it was the right thing.
What was your takeaway then when you look back in that at Southampton and what went on latterly there? Russell Martin struggles. In comes Ivan Juric. You never thought that was an appointment that was ever going to work.
No.
And Dragan Solak, a man I know, and obviously Simon will know, he made that appointment. Why did you not think it would work with Juric?
I didn't see the fit. Didn't see the purpose of the fit. The only thing I could possibly imagine, they spoke the same language.
And that was it. No more.
Couldn't see it. Couldn't see it. Couldn't see why he was brought in. Didn't think there was enough in his track record to tell that he was going to provide the solution to Southampton's problem. Didn't think his style of play. Didn't think his man management had all the capabilities to arrest the slump. And I don't think I was wrong, was I?
I mean, what was the problem at that time at the football club, would you say, Simon? Is it a philosophy issue? What is it?
Yeah, I mean, there'll be a lot made of, the club's inability to get points, really, over the course of the Premier League season. And I think what we certainly had seen in the season preceding as well, that the three teams coming up really found it hard to compete. So I don't think it's not something you can isolate to one particular thing. I think there's an accumulation of lots of things. Obviously I was brought into the club to sort of get some of the more talented younger players and work closely with the first team and get them in. And I ended up with more of a global role in leading the club forward. So I think what we did have in Russell and Ivan, two good guys who I really liked, both treated me very well, both got to know really well, but very, very single-minded and determined into their approach of how the game should be played. So, whether that's right, whether that's wrong, that's how they went after it.